Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and this is Knife AQ number 12, the series where I get to answer all of your knife questions, whether they're big or small. We got some good questions today dealing with assisted opening knives, the point of neck knives, Scandi grinds, a few other things. Let's get into it. All right, before I start answering the questions this week, remember if you want a chance to get your own questions answered in a future installment of this series, make sure to leave it down there in the comments. And for those of you out there who haven't subscribed to this channel yet, just a quick plead. I hope you would grace us with a subscribe, because we're trying to hit that 100,000 subscriber mark by the end of 2020. It's been a terrible year overall for pretty much everyone, but that'd be a cool way to kind of put the cherry on top of the year, maybe at least end on a high note. So would appreciate it if you haven't already. Let's get into the questions. All right, from Mr. Paul Highland, he says, "Hi, I have a question. What folding knives lock in the closed position, any non-autos?" Yes, a bunch of autos do that, obviously, but since you want non-autos, there's not really a whole lot that doesn't have a spring, though. At least not what springs immediately to mind for me. But there are a number of assisted opening knives out there that do have a lock in the closed position. It could be something as simple as like a Kershaw leak with a little slider at the end to kind of hold the tip in. But I'm more specifically thinking of stuff with a crossbar lock, like this SOG Aegis AT or this Benchmade Boost Mini here at the bottom. Both of those have a safety here on the spine. Now what that'll do is when it's in the closed position here, I've got the this Knife Center exclusive SOG Aegis AT right here with blaze orange handles. Flip that little lock into that so the red dot is hidden and that knife is not going to open. Pop it up, flip the knife open. Assisted opening knife, as I said, so it's not an auto, but it does have a spring assist, and you can't lock it in the open position as well. But even with that little piece of the lock sticking up, it doesn't really get in the way. Doesn't create a hot spot for me anyway. But these are really cool and decently priced too. Right now, actually at the point we're filming this is on sale for about 70 bucks. But that's, I think a regular price is about 85. And there are some other colors as well. A green and a blue handled version at this point, but I think they might have some more in the future. Great shape overall, especially for folks with larger hands. You've got a lot here to grab onto. Similarly to that lock on the back, this little lanyard hoop here on the end doesn't get in the way either. Even for my slightly larger than average hands, I've still got plenty of clearance, not even touching that. And even if I was choked back, it actually doesn't create a problem point. Blade steel is cryo-treated D2. Coming in about 3 1/8 of an inch, nice drop point profile with a full flat grind. Great slicer, good for campers, hunters, and some everyday carry as well. Now this Benchmade Mini Boost here is probably a little more EDC centric with the more muted colors. I know a lot of folks aren't going to like to carry the orange day to day. But another great small everyday carry knife here. There's a couple different knives in this series. This one comes in at about 136, about the same blade length, about 3 1/8. Or thereabouts. S30V steel here for a lot more edge retention. Not quite as slicey of a profile as that SOG, but still a very efficient profile day to day. Now the black sections of the handle have a little bit of rubbery tack to them, while the gray sections are harder, so you've got a nice contact patch there for the deep carry pocket clip. Deep carry pocket clip on both of these knives, actually. And what differentiates this knife from that SOG is the spine mounted lock here. Can work in the open position as well. So you can double lock that blade open and then lock the blade closed as well. That's not going to open until you pull that back and you go to town. But there's a lot of great assisted knives in Benchmade's lineup. The Barrage series is certainly a longtime classic. One of the things I really like about this Boost, other than just I like the blade shape, is the little pinch point here, like tiny thumb scallops right on the front of the handle. So you've got some really nice options for choking up on the blade. If you want something higher end still, I've got another Benchmade. This is the Vector, or one of the versions of the Vector, coming in at about 285 right now. Of course, there's a lot more going on in the build of this knife. Of course, you've got a much more going on the blade as well. You've got about 3.6 inches of 20 CV steel, so more edge retention still. And then you've got that recurve drop point shape with compound grinds, hollow here at the back, flat at the tip for a little more durability. But you've got the increased slicing capabilities of that thinner edge on the recurve section there. Got aluminum bolsters here on the back, contoured OD green G10 for the handles. Has a nice little sweep coming up here through the axis bar lock and on back into that G10, open back profile. So it's going to be easier to keep clean perhaps than the closed profile of either of these other two knives. Actually, no, the SOG is pretty open back, but the Boost has a back spacer there. So some will appreciate that. Deep carry pocket clip again. Axis lock with the assist and a small flipper tab in this case, but it will lock in the closed position. You're not going to be able to pop that open until you pull the lock back, and then you've got some good assisted action on top. Now, in addition to that, this is something, of course, that would void your warranty, so I wouldn't recommend doing this if that's something you care about. But there are some folks out there I know who like knives like this, but they don't like the assist. It should be possible to de-assist, take the spring action out of these Benchmade models and still be able to use the axis lock normally without any kind of spring assist. But I don't think that's the case on the SOG, so keep that in mind. But again, I don't recommend you do that. There you go. All right, next question, another thing related to assisted opening knives from D Doubt. He says, is it better to store an assisted knife opened or closed? Definitely closed. It's the way I understand it, and the way I understand that springs work is it's not so much holding a spring under tension that's going to cause it to wear out, but it's actually utilizing the spring, the more repetitions of open, close, open, close, open, close. That's really what's going to actually wear out a spring. So for longevity, definitely store it closed, and also for safety, just store it closed. You don't want a bunch of open knives just lying around with their blades open. Even if it's in a drawer, it can get a little messy and a little dicey, no pun intended, if you reach in there with a bunch of exposed edges laying around. So yeah, always store your knives closed, whether they're assisted, automatic, or just manual. All right, next question is from Victor Andres. He says, I want to get my girlfriend a knife for in her purse. The requirements are it should be small, but still have a full grip, something like the Cold Steel Mini Tough Light, but a bit less aggressive looking than that knife. Would also like it to be a bit more colorful, not necessarily blue or pink, but that would be nice. Sure. Instantly, the first thing I thought of, and I think it's a great option, is the Spyderco Dragonfly. Bunch of different options of this, and there may be some debate as to whether this is less aggressive looking than that Cold Steel knife. It's the same, a similar kind of size and a similar kind of format in that you've got that full-size finger choil here, so you've got a full grip. Even with my, like I said, slightly larger than average hands, I can still get my fourth finger on that handle. So especially if your wife does have smaller hands, sorry, girlfriend, don't tell her I said wife. But especially if she does have some smaller hands, she should still be able to get a full grip on this, and then it's gonna fold up nice and easy. You've got the back lock there, so you've got retention, or you've got a bias towards closure, so it's not likely to come open as much in her purse. Do be careful, something can snag, of course, in that opening hole, but that's neither here nor there at this point. But I think, in regard, backing up a little bit, regarding the less aggressive looking, I think the stainless steel version, especially here, looks just very nice. These come in about $78. But there are FRN handled versions with a few different colors. No pinks or blue. Well, there is a blue in the K390 version right now, but no pinks right now. Although there's an upcoming pink Delica with S30V later. Keep that in mind. You could pre-order that at the KnifeCenter. But the stainless steel one is nice and classy. I think it doesn't look super aggressive. It's got a simple, classy look, great size handle, excellent cutting geometry on the blade, full flat grind with the VG10 steel. And the length on these from tip to that scale is less than 2.5 inches. So that really is a knife that, obviously, know your local regulations. This is not legal advice, but that's a length that is gonna be pretty safe, pretty much most places in the country where you actually can carry a knife. Don't take it into courts or schools or anything like that. But yeah, check out that Dragonfly. I think that might be just the ticket. All right, next question is from Don Coddington. He says, what knife would you recommend as a steak knife to bring to restaurants? Good question. Of course, there's a ton of fixed blade options out there that could make their way over into a steak knife. I especially like stuff with a trailing point profile. I've always thought the Spyderco Bow River would make a great steak knife because they're not too expensive. I don't have one here in front of me, unfortunately. But if you're looking for a folding knife, I do have a couple of options here. The first is from Shun, of course, Shun Kitchen Knives, it is the Higo no Kami Personal Steak Knife. There you go. I mean, they made it exactly for folks like you. There's actually two versions of this. There's the Shun version, and there's also a lower priced Kai version. Kai, of course, is the parent company that owns Shun as well as Kershaw and Zero Tolerance. It's pretty much the same design. Blade shape's a little different, and the materials aren't quite as nice. You've got a Zytel type of handle on this as opposed to the nicer handle on here. But so a lot of the stuff I'll show you on the Shun carries over to that Kai, so keep that in mind. We're about $100 on the Shun, but right now the Kai is on sale for $30, so it really is quite a deal. But there's the profile. It's nice and narrow. It's going to carry very easily. They even include a nice small leather pocket sheath for it as well. So you can wrap that up. It'll fit in your pants pocket, real nice in a jacket pocket if it's a nicer place where you're going with wearing a suit or something like that. But it's easy to open. You've got the tab here at the top. It's not really a flipper tab. This is the Higo no Kami style of opener. It's more akin to an old school friction folder, the way those open, but you do actually have a liner lock on this knife, which is quite nice. Now the blade here is about 3 3/8 of an inch long, VG10 on the Shun version, simpler 420 on the Kai. In addition to working well as a steak knife, this would be a great letter opener, great executive knife. I think very non-threatening looking design. Black ebony packwood handles and a nice mosaic pin here right on the front, which looks really cool. So in addition to the steak knife uses, to our previous question, looking for a knife for his girlfriend, I know this is nothing at all like the Cold Steel Mini Tough Light, but I think this actually, this personal steak knife would actually make a halfway decent purse knife. Folded up, could slip in a compartment in there, and yeah, what do you guys think? I think that'd be a really good option, actually. Now, in addition to those, Victorinox recently came out with their foldable paring knife series, which comes in just under $17. And while they're definitely not as nice, they are still, I think, a viable option for this sort of thing. A bunch of different colors. Well, not a bunch. There is a pink one, purse guy. But there's black, red, yellow, and pink at this point, and an orange. And most of those can be had both in a plain edge or a fully serrated edge. These would make a very, very good steak knife, very usable. In fact, especially with the serrated edge, that kind of looks like a cafeteria steak knife already. But yeah, they look cool. They clean up nice. You got a liner lock there as well. And the price on them is quite good at $17. All right, our next question is from Nick Obotsky. Dave, like you, I'm a classy guy, and classy guys like us, who you been talking to, also need a classy slip joint. I want to know what you would buy around $150. Cool question. Thank you for the compliment, sir. Obviously, you've been talking to some people who might be overselling me a little bit, but that's okay. When I think of these days, at least, like classier slip joints, I actually usually, especially on the more premium side of things, the Italians make some really good stuff. That's where my mind goes to pretty much immediately these days. A lot of good stuff from like Lion Steel, MKM, folks like that, making some real cool knives. And around that $150 price point today, I'd probably pick up the Lion Steel Gitano. Really, really cool looking knife here. Titanium bolsters and a carbon fiber handle scales, although you can get it in wood as well, some like classy olive woods and Santos mahogany, that sort of thing. The blade here is Nylox, and I love the shape. It's just like an old school slip joint clip point knife, just on steroids a little bit broader, a little bit swoopier. Nice bit of attitude. Let's see, about 3.35 inches, so plenty of length, and that Nylox steel is going to get you some really good edge retention and performance as well. There's plenty of length on here for a full grip, even for me. I do come in right behind that bulb here on the end, so I do definitely feel like I have a solid grip on this knife, can get a lot of work done, but also look nice in those classier situations where you seem to think I may fit in. Crown spine on the back, just for one thing, that gives you a little extra comfort there on the spine, and I love that this is something a lot of those Italian companies do. They usually carry that crown spine, that crowned look onto the back spring on most of their slip joints as well. Really enjoy that. And then you've even got a pocket clip on this particular knife to make it easier to carry. Coming in right now about $137. There you go. Cool knife. Lion Steel gets on it. All right, our next question comes from Not Your Usual Demographic. It says, "Hi David, I have several questions. Feel free to choose one or ignore all. The first is somewhat trivial. How do you get the sticky stuff off your blade after opening boxes sealed by tape? For stuff like that, I'd go with a solvent like acetone is what I typically use. Works very well on all kinds of adhesives. The second is technical. What is a Scandi grind and why does it work better for bushcraft?" All right, cool question. Right here I've got an LT Wright Holy Bushman. This particular one is about $200 with the Python micarta handles, and it does have a Scandi grind, as you can see. Now, when it comes to quote-unquote bushcraft types of tasks, a lot of the stuff you're going to be doing with your knife tend to be oriented around woodworking, and that's the reason why a lot of bushcrafters prefer a Scandi grind, because a Scandi grind works exceptionally well at carving wood. Because you've got those two short, straight planes coming right down to that zero, although on this LT Wright they have buffed the edge, they have a tiny hint of a micro bevel just for a little bit of strength, but you still get the same kind of action. But you can kind of think of a Scandi grind as a chisel in a way. It just has two bevels instead of one. That'll give you the kind of idea of why it works better at wood. Also, the typical angle on these, most factory knives come with a 20-degree per bevel side, or a 20-degree angle per side. Scandi grinds are typically much narrower than that. So right behind the edge, right at the edge, they are going to feel sharper when you have a good edge on it. But then, of course, if you're doing slicing stuff, the shoulders of that grind will start getting in the way of the efficiency, so it's a trade-off there. But for stuff like making, like whittling, making tent stakes, carving small traps, making implements, just making feather sticks, preparing kindling for a fire, it works exceptionally well. Now, of course, you can do those types of tasks with any edge, but bushcraft, unlike survival where you may be dealing with limited tools, the bushcraft genre, you typically have more tools available to you, which is why you don't need a one-tool option type of thing for your knife, which is why you see a lot of smaller knives compared to some of the larger survival knives out there, because you're going to have tools to handle the bigger jobs, which you might not have on hand in a survival scenario. But this LT Wright Holy Bushman is the second generation of this knife. They're very cool, very comfortable handles. Again, if you're going to be doing a lot of woodworking, you want them to be very comfortable while you're doing that. You don't want hot spots. They finish the handles on all of these by hand, so there's no seams to get in the way. And you can tell with this type of handle, it's just very accommodating. And the blade here is about 3¼ inches of A2 steel, so it's very controllable and very easy to use on those bushcraft needs. All right, that's two of your 4 questions. Let's see what else you've got. The third is a request for a knife recommendation. If I wanted to learn to sharpen, what budget knife would you recommend to practice on? And the fourth is more involved. How would you recommend that I learn to sharpen? And what intro level equipment would you suggest? Thanks for sharing. Yes, for a budget knife to practice sharpening on, I gotta go with a Swiss Army knife. Reason being, it's a very simple steel to sharpen. It's a simpler alloyed stainless. They tend to run them a little bit on the softer side. That's not to say that they're soft per se, but it's not as hard as some of the high-end knife steels nowadays. But that's going to make it very easy to sharpen and make it very easy to tell what's going on with various different sharpening methods as you work. You're not going to have to work as hard to get a feel for it. And then you can transfer those skills onto any knife blade in the future, knowing, of course, it's just going to take a little bit more time or effort in some cases. Yeah. Plus, they're just really great to have around. This is the Evolution 10, which is based on one of the old Wenger knives before they consolidated the line to be all under Victorinox. Got that nice little capable blade right there. And in addition to that, toothpick and tweezers as per usual. You've also got your bottle opener and your can opener with the screwdriver tips on the end. Nice corkscrew and an awl on the back. I won't open that because I got my fingernail stuck, but that's okay. And we've got, on that note, a nice fingernail file as well, which is just a great handy thing to have on every day. I actually carry a similar version Swiss Army knife to this every day. It's just a little bit thicker with a few more implements. Great little size to have just about anywhere. Now, as to your last question, how to learn more and what to buy for intro level sharpening. It's kind of a two-part answer for me, because for intro level stuff, I always recommend the Spyderco Sharp Maker. It's a little more pricey than some basic stuff you can get. They're a little bit over 70 bucks right now, but you honestly don't even really need to quite know how to sharpen in order to use these very effectively. I've actually given these to folks as wedding presents along with a nice kitchen knife before, folks that are not knife people at all, and they're still able, with just by watching the DVD or watching the video we've done on this subject, you can get a hair shaving edge with this extremely easily. Works exceptionally well, highly recommended. It all comes down into its own base, and you can pop this. This actually becomes the lid, so it's real easy to store in a drawer, like in your kitchen or in your office, that sort of thing. But it doesn't really teach you about sharpening in a way. It does and it doesn't. If you want to really get a feel for other methods of sharpening, more manual methods that aren't guided like this one are, stones, strops, that sort of thing, we actually have done a number of how to sharpen videos, and we're going to link to a playlist of those in the description, so you can go check those out. I'd recommend watching those, seeing what you think. There's some products in there that you can check out as well, or get the Sharp Maker, or do both. That's what I would actually do. Love having the Sharp Maker around, even to this day. I have one, lives in my kitchen. It still puts in a lot of good work for me. All right, last question is from Ska Nomad. He says, what's your take on neck carry? I have Ethan's Necker, of course, and an older Spyderco, the Spot, and a Benchmade Elishewitz model. Here we go. Here is your Ethan's knife, I'm assuming, your Becker BK11. Great, classic, durable neck knife. He says, I like this style of carry, and I think small fixed blades are very practical carried this way. I skipped. He also mentions folders carried in a neck sheath. Yes, love to talk about neck knives, and love to talk about the BK11 as well. Great little knife, comes in about 50 bucks, American made, 1095 steel. Just a fantastic little neck survival knife, so to speak. You can get micarta scales for it as well, or just leave it as such, maybe wrap it in paracord, but it's gonna get a lot of work done. And so the way I understand kind of the history of neck carry, there may be other origins as well, but I know it was something in the Nordic countries that was very commonplace for their smaller fixed blades, and they typically would have been carried inverted, with the tip down, as opposed to a lot of today's neck carry, which come with a like a Kydex type of sheath where you can carry it inverted. But the reason that I understand it, that a lot of those folks carried it around their neck, is because you could get to it in the event of an emergency where you couldn't necessarily get to your belt. Whether that's maybe you've fallen through some ice, that's the stereotypical example I've heard. You can still get to your neck knife and use it as sort of an ice pick to help pull you out of the ice. Less of a concern for most of us nowadays, I will admit, but there are still some good reasons to do it. Of course, a lot of folks like it for the concealability factor. I'm not a huge fan of that, because I think it makes your accessibility factor go down as well, but for some folks that's a thing. But for the outdoorsmen out there, there's a lot of good reasons to do it. First, thinking of those Nordic countries again, when it does get cold here and you might have a long winter coat on, maybe you want to get to your fixed blade, but you don't want to have to lift your coat up to get to your belt and let the cold air in. It's real handy to have a neck knife, easily accessible. But even during warmer months, for hikers and backpackers especially, you might be dealing with a more prominent hip belt on your backpack, in which case that can also sometimes get in the way of belt carrying things effectively, or accessing things on your belt. So in those situations, again, a nice neck carried knife, whether it's fixed or folding, would be very handy. But I love that BK11. Like I said, it's a classic design, works exceptionally well, and Ethan Becker's a pretty good dude as well. But apart from that, if you want to see some more neck knife options, we did a video on that earlier this year as well. We'll make sure to leave a link to that also. All right, that is it for Knife AQ number 12. Again, remember, if you want to have a chance to get one of your own questions answered in a future installment, leave them down there in the comments. And again, hit us with a subscribe if you haven't already. Would greatly appreciate it. In the meantime, if you want to get your hands on any of these knives, make sure to follow the links in our description to take you over to KnifeCenter.com. And make sure you sign up for our Knife Rewards program while you're there as well, because if you're going to spend your money on one of these knives, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center, signing off. See you next time.